House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt has confirmed that US President Donald Trump will meet Chinese President Xi Jinping next week as part of his trip to Asia. Leavitt has said that Trump will meet Xi in South Korea. Let's take a listen in to her statements.
On Wednesday morning local time, the president will fly to Busan, where he will participate in a bilateral meeting with the President of the Republic of Korea, deliver keynote remarks at the APEC CEO luncheon, and then participate in a U.S. APEC leaders working dinner. On Thursday morning local time, President Trump will participate in a bilateral meeting with President Xi of the People's Republic of China before departing to return home to Washington, D.C.
Meanwhile, China has confirmed that trade talks will be held between the United States and China in Malaysia starting on October the 24th. Chinese Vice Premier He Lifeng is set to meet US Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and Trade Representative Jamieson Greer for the trade talks in Malaysia. US officials also said earlier that they would head to Malaysia to discuss Beijing's curbs on exports of rare earths with Chinese officials. These meetings come as tensions have flared between the two countries since Beijing expanded curbs on rare earths and other exports in response to a US hike in the number of firms barred from purchasing American technology. We're now joined by our guest, Andrew KP Lung. He's an independent Chinese strategist and he joins us live from Hong Kong. Andrew, thank you very much for joining us here on NewsX World. Andrew, a hugely significant meeting. The two presidents of the two world's largest economies. Can you tell us a little bit about the significance of that meeting? It's taken weeks to put together, apparently, but what is going to happen as soon as these two titans of the modern world meet next week in South Korea? I do apologize. I believe you might be muted.
Okay.
Yes, we can hear you now,
What's
Andrew.
happening? Yes, I can, yes.
Oh, did you hear my question? I was just wondering, what is your expectations for when Donald Trump meet? What can we expect from their conversations? How do the two individuals get along? Of course, we've seen tensions between the two countries. Of course, the two world's largest economies boast larger-than-life characters at their helm. But how can we expect those two individuals, those being Donald Trump and President Xi Jinping, to interact with one another?
Well, of course, this is a contest not just between two individuals, but between two superpowers who have been rivaling each other for global leadership and dominance. And President Trump has been using all the arsenal under his charge in order to contain China's rise. I mean, that happens even during his first term. But now, during his second term, he's doubling down on everything, left, right, and center. Using the tariffs, sledgehammer, restricting China's access to high-end chips, rallying Americans' traditional allies to contain China economically and also militarily, particularly in the South China Sea, and the so-called first island chain centered in Okinawa, and second island chain centered in Guam, and with a port with Australia, India, and Japan, and increasingly with South Korea and the Philippines. And of course, the China, unlike what China was, say, a decade ago, China has now become much more confident. It's not just a feeling, it is a long-term strategy, starting from President Trump's first term. Because President Xi already foresaw what is coming, has directed the Chinese nation to double down on self-reliance on technology and also pivoting to the global south in terms of trade. After all, China is the largest trading partner to 128 countries around the world, compared with only 58 for the United States. And of course, China is dominant in the global supply value chain for almost all products under the sun. Particularly, China has found a lethal stranglehold on the rare earth, not so much in supply, because you can find rare earth other countries, including Australia and other countries, but the processes. So I think that with these arsenal, but on the other hand, China's economy is being hurt badly, and so it augurs well for some sort of accommodation with President Trump in the forthcoming meeting.
Andrew, of course, China is an outlier when it comes to these negotiations. When it came to the tariffs, we saw China meet with the United States in numerous European cities separately. China did have weight when it came to the negotiating table. However, Donald Trump, of course, and his administration is outspoken when it comes to their opinion on Xi Jinping. He goes so far to call Xi Jinping a friend. The man, Xi Jinping, is a lot more reserved than Donald Trump. Do you think President Xi and his administration is going into this meeting with confidence in the fact that he can come back with some sort of deal, can put more confidence on Chinese investments and the overall Asian market?
Well, I think, of course, what Trump worries relatively more for the time being is, of course, is the soybeans, because the soybeans, China has been the largest buyer of American soybeans, and of course, the Republican Party's main supporters are in those states in the United States producing soybeans and other agricultural products. And almost 80% of their soybean exports have been to China. But now, because of the trade war, China is now weaponizing this and buying all the soybeans from other countries. Now, bear in mind, soybeans is not like rare earths; it can be easily replaceable. So China is now buying all the soybeans from Brazil and also Russia. And that hurts the prospect of President Trump's midterm elections. And that's why he's very, very eager to find some sort of a deal. But what kind of a deal could be reached? And of course, President Xi doesn't want an all-out war. President Xi wants to have not only, definitely not a hot war for that matter, neither does President Trump, but also a more predictive and more quiet international environment to enable China to continue to grow its economy and to bring goodies on the table for its people. Now,
yes.
China, of course, suffered most in terms of the American high-tech software, for example, and also restrictions on certain high-tech products. And of course, in genetics, because after all, China has now had to import airplanes either from Airbus, which is now pivoting towards, or from Boeing. But I think that these the supply of passenger flight engines and also high-tech software could be exchanged for China easing some of the restrictions on rare.
Yes. Andrew, do stay with us. We have some further information coming out of the region. Asian markets have surged today following the White House's confirmation that President Donald Trump will meet Chinese President Xi Jinping next week at the APEC summit in South Korea. The announcement raised hopes of easing trade tensions between the two economic giants. Equities on Wall Street also surged, with all major indices finishing strong. In Asia, Tokyo led the charge, up over 1%, with gains seen in Hong Kong, Shanghai and Seoul. Tech stocks were among the top performance. boosted by Intel's strong earnings forecast. Meanwhile, oil prices saw a slight dip after significant gains earlier this week, sparked by US sanctions on Russian oil giants. The global market also reacted to news of China's efforts to boost domestic consumption and national security in the next 5 years. Traders are now awaiting US consumer price data, which is expected to have major implications for Federal Reserve policy. We are now joined by Gerard Alfil. He is an economist and he joins us live from Dubai. Thank you very much, Gerard, for joining us here on the programme. It is a pleasure to have you. Gerard, your thoughts on the significance and of this Trump-Xi meeting and its driving force behind this surge that we have seen, not just in Asian markets, but on Wall Street as well?
Good morning, Thomas. Yes, as I said on Monday already here on this show, that I expect that talks will go on, that the negotiations will now go into the details. And that's what we are seeing next week in South Korea. As you mentioned, the 15th five-year plan in China was just implemented, chaired by Chairman Xi Jinping. In China, they call him the chairman. Outside, we call him the president, of course, always. And to me, this is all a gain, is a point which China has scored this week. One news also which came out this week, which was interesting to me as a German, is that China has replaced again the US as the biggest trade partner of Germany. Germany is an export superpower. And this shows that whatever President Trump has done to put China at bay did not work out. On the contrary, all his measures, the more he tried to keep China at bay, the stronger China became. As Andrew mentioned, also through the Belt and Road Initiative, through integration of APEC, of the Asian economies. And this is, of course, what the investors at Wall Street, but also at Asian markets now reward. They see here talks go on. China has strengthened its position, and in relation to expectations to the meetings next week in South Korea, I would say there will not be a big deal, but I think some points will be settled in relation to tech, to chips, and so on. The Taiwan question, Taiwan is part of China, will definitely, I think, not be solved in a meeting in South Korea, but it's also a meeting of high symbolism. You mentioned Busan. Busan was in the Korean War in the early 1950s, the last beachhead which the US and its allies defended against in the Korean War. So this shows also the US wants to strengthen its ties to the allies, traditional allies in East Asia, South Korea, Japan, Singapore, and elsewhere.
Also, Gerard, we have the news, of course, about oil prices sparked by these new sanctions by the US government on these Russian oil giants, of course, due to Vladimir Putin's war in Ukraine. They saw significant gains they saw a slight dip after significant gains earlier this week. Could you tell us about the crude market after these sanctions imposed by Washington?
The crude market, and that's what the IMF stated this week, is that there will be an increase in of the exporting oil countries, the Arab oil countries also. There will be an increase in production, but also the Gulf Arab markets are booming. And the oil price in Brent was touching $60 per barrel, which is 159 liters per barrel. So there was the danger that oil